That's a little tough to lead into. Wow. Anyway,
Use your intuition.
my copious notes here. And I'm just going to talk a little bit, and maybe after I talk a little bit, you might have some questions. And I'm a Coptic teacher, not a preacher, so thank you, John. And so I'm going to try to just throw a few ideas out here and have you chew on them a little bit. The first one is when we were created. And in several pieces of literature that I've read, and I find that this seems to be true, and that is that when God created us, He created us perfect, but He created us as a spiritual perfect being, and He gave us everything that we could possibly need for eternity. But apparently that was not enough, so He decided that He'd put us here on this planet. And when He put us here on this planet, when we incarnated, we forgot absolutely everything about ourselves, and we have to relearn it or experience things that remind us of it, and that sort of thing. And I find that really interesting because in my own case, time and time again, I try to look back and say, okay, if I was created perfect, what is the answer to this question? And even maybe I'm just lucky, but sometimes I do get an answer, and it comes back. But one of the things that I have had a problem with over the years is knowing what I am so that I can function at the highest possible level that I was made to be functioning here on this earth. And so how does this, I've been trying to figure out how this interaction between our Creator and I work, what our Creator actually set up for me here on this earth, and I don't think what He set up for me is any different than He set it up for every one of you. And that's where my title of my talk comes out tonight, is You'll Never Get Out of Yourself. And I say that because when we take in information, as a child, how many of you ever read the Four Agreements book? You got a few of you. Thank you. That helps me. And but when you take in information, you have to approve of it, and you approve of it by your parents and what they say. You're a good little girl or you're a good little boy if you believe this, or if you do this or you do that. And we absorb information at a rate that's unbelievable. After we're 6 years old, we've learned about 90% of what we know in life before we're 6 years old. we absorb this and we say to our parents, yep, I believe that, I believe this, I believe that, I believe something else. And we absorb that information. But we continue to do that throughout our entire life. We don't let it go. What's the right term here? I haven't got all of this figured out. But we don't take anything in that we don't agree with. And we have opinions on that, and we function, everything that comes to us, we judge as to what it is and what's the meaning and what we should do with it and all of that. And it's a process. It's so interesting to me that if I present something, for instance, to Laura Joy, and I think, or I think of her, for instance, and I think, oh golly, she's this, she's that, she's something else. I won't get any specific more than that. What I've done is I'm using my mind and I'm using my I'm using my mind to project that to her. And what she unconsciously perhaps will want to do is to fulfill my expectations. So when she interacts with me, she will act in such a way as to fulfill those expectations. Now, if those expectations are positive, like I hope they are with my wife, that's wonderful. But if they happen to be negative, you've set up a situation where you're promoting in the other person an activity that you don't approve of. And it's something that we would not want to do. And the same instance, if you present those positive things, you're projecting a energy there. Your emotions, that's the word I was trying to come up with before. Your emotions give those ideas, those thoughts, power and energy to be projected and to be picked up by the other person. And so you want to look and know that you can affect other people and what they do and how they act by your thoughts. And I think it's very important to know that. And the thoughts that we hold in our minds, again, by our emotions, we're creating those things. But they're all a decision. And we create, and this is the real part that I want you to know, is that you create your reality. You create your world, and you don't ever get out of it. My wife's world is a little different than mine because she's a different person. But if I create a world for her by positive thoughts, by my actions and deeds, and each time that I make a decision as something to do or something to, what I'm thinking of is that I keep it in a positive way, as a positive thought, I'm creating my reality, and projecting that reality to the other person. And I think the biggest thing that I want you to recognize, and I've never tried to teach this to somebody, and this is the first time I've really stood up and talked about it. I've tried to explain it to a few people one-to-one. I feel like I'm better at things that way, but that's okay. But you just flat out want to, every thought, everything that projected out of you, absolutely everything. Think about it. Think about, is this going to have a positive reaction or a negative reaction? If it's going to have a negative reaction, shut up and stop. Don't do it, because it's affecting not only that other person through the projection of the thought, and they're attempting to really satisfy you, support your thinking, or so let the negative stuff go. Only positive thoughts. Create your very best wonderful reality through your interactions with everybody in a very, very positive way. That old adage of make it love is where you want to be in everything. And with that, if you have questions, I'll try to answer them. I'm going to shut up. So, yes.
I don't have a question, but there have been people that are very negative, and I'll say, that's just a negative statement, and I feel that being positive is very important. And they'll say, oh, I'm not going to be a Pollyanna. That's just for people who don't ever want to look at life the way it is. And I have a real hard time. I just have a hard time with that.
Well, about the only thing that you can do is just bless them and let them go.
Yeah, I have.
And you know, at some point in their life, you know, when you have an opportunity, you can point out something, maybe if they happen to be somebody in your circles and that sort of thing. But for the most part, there isn't an argument that you can really come up with that says that it's going to change their mind. But there are experiences that people have and can have and do have that might remind them of something that you said or did. And, you know, that opens up a new doorway of thought. And that's about what I would suggest. You know, everybody is at a different stage in their development. And we're very fortunate here to have an awful lot of like-minded people. And I grew up in a family that was much like this family, but everybody around thought that Jimmy was crazy. You know?
I know the feeling.
And so,
You feel like
so you know, that's just part of learning the steps that we're at, and if we approach everything with love and project that love and mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, the whole 9 yards, then we're creating our own world. And so we're going to get that love back. And that's why in the Bible it talks about the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Because you could also say, what you do to others is going to happen to you. And that's approaching it more of a worldly way. And the other one is David's, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. Rod and thy staff that comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies, and my cup runneth over. Goodness and mercy follows me all the days of my life. And that's because at that time, David had not projected anything negative, even to his enemies. And so he couldn't be touched. Spiritual losses, he couldn't be touched.
Thank you.
Yeah. You had a question, Julie?
I understood everything that you said because my grandmother used to teach me. She was a Christian Scientist, and she said other people's thoughts can affect you. And she would always, like, I was in junior high, you know, and I fell in the gym and cracked my skin. I had to go get stitches. And Grandma said, well, is there somebody that doesn't like you? Because they could have made you fall with their thoughts. And so I've had this problem, always trying to make everybody like me all the time, until I finally figured out, well, that isn't working either, you know, because it's not, I can't just be myself. You know, I don't know. How do you protect yourself? I guess, you know, just bless them and let them go. But,
You just have
know,
to bless them, let them
explains-
go and understand that,
and
and love it, and love them.
And don't react with negative
But-
at them because it's like my relatives.
Well, you know, maybe a little more.
Bless us all, each and every one.
More something that we see almost every day on the television. Somebody's been to court. There's been a murder. There's been a this or there's been a that, and the person who has committed this crime is being sent to jail. And the media and our world, so it seems, has got to the point where they say, oh, the punishment is never enough. It's never enough. It's never enough. But that punishment is going to come back and haunt them because they got to let it go. They got to replace that with love and understanding. And I've said this to a few of you before. You know, it was later after the war, but I went through Dachau, and I still have to get the hair back down on my back, even right now, just mentioning the word. That was Hitler's death camp, one of them. And it's unbelievable that people could think to do this kind of thing to their fellow being. But you know something? I have forgiven even Adolf Hitler for that. Because there's a lot of, I could go on, and some of it you'd understand, and some of it, I guess it's just something internal. But you just flat out have to do that so that you can go on in life and that you can see maybe a bigger picture and what have you. And remember, the best thing I can tell you there is Hitler was having an experience as well as the Jewish people or the German people or some Austrians were there. I had a teacher that had escaped minutes before their capture, from Austria. They were the Minister of Education in Austria and his wife. And you each were having an experience that made them grow.
Right.
And Hitler is going to be in heaven also.
That's funny how.
Yeah.
That's,
Yeah, do you believe that forgiveness is as much for ourselves as it is for the other person?
Yeah, it is. It's definitely for yourself. But it gives you understanding
Yeah.
that you don't have otherwise. And it brings up pictures of things and situations which give you more understanding of maybe things that occurred and what have you. And, sometimes you wonder, what's God's purpose in our having this experience? I'm not really that sure, but it's part of our growing process and part of we're learning a whole lot about what we don't want on this planet. And in Hawaiian shamanism, by forgiving the other person and not projecting that negative energy to them as well, there were some healings that were absolutely incredible. People that were so incorrigible that they were in shackles in a period of a few years were released and sent back home. So the power of forgiveness is just beyond almost our current comprehension. Yes. Okay. So, anyway.
I got one more.
Okay.
I was just talking to Bev in the library before, and
Speak up, please.
I'm sorry. Like I said before, my grandmother was a Christian Scientist, and then my mother, her daughter, always, my whole life, she always had the daily word in our home, which is Unity, which is an offshoot of Christian Science. So last June, a little. Okay, agree to disagree, but I started the Course in Miracles on June 1st, so I'm on like lesson 138. And I got my monthly daily word, well, for November, December, and it had something, it always has books for sale. And Unity, the daily word, has the Course of Miracles and Unity as together for sale, so I had to order that because I was thinking the Course in Miracles is so much like it. And it's like my grandmother started, and then my mother, and here I am. Took me a long time, but it's like it's on the same line. But
It comes back around.
But it's the whole point in the Course in Miracles is that our world that we created with our ego, because we took our own will, we thought we could be separate from God, which you can't be separate from God, but you can only think you can and go on your own ego.
Right.
That's why we have all this television media. It's like everybody's got a lot to say because they're coming out of their ego. But the answer to this world is forgiveness. It gives us everything we need.
Right.
It's just
Absolutely.
so simple.
Now, I first began to study the Course in Miracles about 25 years ago.
Right.
And it's a fantastic book. And the information that's in it is very much the same as the Coptics. It's just different words.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
I happened to stop in Unity last summer and to study Course in Miracles, and they told me that there was a follow-on to Course in Miracles. Have you heard of that?
The what now?
It's just an FYI. There's a follow-on to the Course in Miracles.
Follow on.
Yeah, in other words, the same voice of Christ came through another lady. Helen Schuckman died,
Yeah,
the
right,
original
right.
channeler. And so this one went through a woman by the name of Marie Perron. She didn't want any publicity about herself at all. She called herself the first receiver, but it's called A Course of Love. And it's remarkable because the Course in Miracles, he said it was to break down kind of like the bond of the intellect and the ego kind of going together. But A Course of Love just moves it all into the heart and has exercises to completely form your heart that would be the forgiving motivation and so on. It's
Well,
like this thick.
Well, I think a lot of this is it is a progression of information, and it's a progression of what we need
Yeah.
in order to function at the best level that we're capable of functioning. And I think that probably the idea that like I say, we're coming up to more and more to the point where if we just realize that we are creating our own future minute by minute by minute by minute. Nobody else is doing it for us. They might be influencing us by their thoughts, but we have to take those thoughts in and agree with them in order for that thought to be something that we're going to be useful. But we just flat out need to realize that we're creating our own future minute by minute by minute by minute. Every thought that we have is a creation, and as we use those thoughts to create a positive world, and we've got lots of positive words to use, whatever is positive to you, use those, put those together, include them in your analysis of what you say and how you say it.
I think also, I definitely agree with you that we create our own reality, but I think we also need to take responsibility for creating.
Yeah, well, to me that's automatic.
Yeah, but
When
not,
you're creating
maybe not to
something, you're
everybody.
responsible for it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I think our thought is magnetic, and so if you get a positive thought going, you have a magnetic center that's positive that will attract positive thoughts. But we are bombarded constantly in the media and every place else to go wandering off, and you can find yourself going down a road that's negative awfully fast. Just by looking at somebody's license plate, or somebody's bumper sticker, or, and you can find yourself once in a while going a good way too, like there was one that Life is Bliss, which I was glad I saw because the one I saw before was just awful, awful, awful. I won't tell you what it said. But you see something like that and all of a sudden you're going in your mind to all these negative places,
Yeah. Well, that's why I say it. As you're thinking and as you're going forward in life, do it in a positive way, with as positive thoughts and as positive actions as you can possibly put together. We're all a little different, and that's okay. I guess we're supposed to be. But the idea that if we can implant it into our minds that I'm creating my future, I'm going to get back what I give out. And so I want to give out the best stuff that I can possibly do. And
And I think if you can reside, with your higher power, so that's in charge, that's what you gotta do.
I don't have it fully figured out, but the number one in Siddha Yoga was Nityananda, and he did the miraculous a lot around India. And I was going through what you said about Psalm 23, which I'm very familiar with, but he resonated at a very high frequency, and he had a man come to him that said, I've got this wonderful beverage and you've got to try it because it does wonderful things for you. So he handed it to Nityananda, and it was full of poison. So Nityananda thanked him, and he says, well, I want to enjoy this beverage. So he drank it. And the guy who offered it to him died. Immediately. So there's that, I don't see that as forgiveness. I don't see that as mercy. I see that as
A learning thing. I would say
it was immediate. He was he was at an untouchable level, like you said, King David might have been, but judgment was swift as soon as the act was done. Then I don't follow that. But
He's operating under other
there's
laws than we are. He said it different.
something about you put that out and you came right back to him.
Well, again, you're responsible for what you do, and in
Yeah.
that particular case,
Immediate.
It was karma, wasn't it?
it sounds to me like the learning of the negativity of that could be completed like that, so it was. It's not something that we normally think of as happening that quickly, but I don't, say that any of these kind of things are impossible. That's our. We could contemplate all kinds of things about it, but it's a little bit like healing. Who was it? I did your Joan. I did your finger there. How's it feel?
Still a little.
Is it
Still a little, yeah.
Still a little bit. Okay.
See what tomorrow.
Well, what I tried to do as an explanation was dissolve the joint and reconstruct it while I was doing the healing on her. And that would be in the same kind of modality as what you're talking in a way. I got to maybe get in touch with a couple of higher powers or something to understand just exactly what was going on in that particular instance. But it sounds very appropriate. And I look at it as a learning situation for all involved. A learning situation. Because that's the most important thing you can do, is to learn something for anything that goes on in your life. You're supposed to learn things from it. And I can't necessarily say what Julie here is supposed to be learning from her experiences, but inside her, there's an answer. And so the information is there. She's got to process it and come up with the answer as to how that affects her life and what she's learning out of it to make her life a better place to live in the future.
It's a lot better than it was in the past.
Anybody else?
It must be doing something.
Thank you, Jim.
Thank you.